r/AskReddit. Non-Americans of Reddit. What's one of the strangest things you've heard about the American culture? Absolutely the healthcare system. Or rather lack thereof. I feel so bad for people who have to pay thousands even just for an ambulance, let alone actual treatment. I cannot even imagine what it's like to consider, do I go to the doctor today? Or do I just wait and hope it's nothing BC I can't really afford it? Edit. Till that about 4/5 of Reddit hates the American healthcare system and the rest defends it viciously lol. You know what's more horrifying? Americans defend it. Pretty sure the only people defending it are the ones who have never been put in a situation where their medical bills threaten their finances. Not that that makes it any better. Though. I'm an American. But I told some Dutch guys I was eating a root ear float in the chat of their stream. I described it. And at first they thought I was joking and trying to get them to eat something weird. They're missing out. When you get that crystallized iced root ear layer on the outside of the ice cream. Then at the end, where you have creamy root ear. I'm not a huge ice cream fan but my god. Going into debt for a wedding. I don't get it either. What a great way to begin your life with someone. Not. My wife and I eloped last week. Spent $3,000 on an Airbnb for 6 days in Napa. Best decision we made. This whole credit system and the way to build it. I mean. Back home. You take a credit when you really need some expensive hit, car, house, boat, Warhammer figurines. But when you set foot in a bank, they explain you have to work for it. You have to take a lot of small credits before taking a big one. That is really weird. This and spending so much on public healthcare with so little benefits. Warhammer figurines. My childhood savings. Gone. At least you're not a disgusting heretic. The emperor protects. The fact that you can't drink in public. I thought this was America. Land of the free. You know. Well, we do have Louisiana. I know that you can in New Orleans and I think that you can in Las Vegas. Your TV ads are the cringiest, cheesy, fake pieces of garbage I've ever seen. It's like watching a bad Lifetime movie condensed into 2 minutes with a product at the end. Don't worry. We hate them too. Dunno, I kinda like the Old Spice adverts. Brit here. I live here now and have come to terms with a lot of the quirks. But something that still strikes me as a much more literal interpretation of religion and priority of faith over morality. Back home a lot of people would consider themselves Christian predominantly in a cultural sense. With the Bible seen as a collection of stories designed to inform morality. Faith and belief was secondary to being a morally good person, and in general your relationship with any god was something for the private sphere. In contrast, I've met a lot of religious people here in the States where morality is secondary to faith. And to be Christian is defined by the literal belief in Christ and his resurrection. Your relationship with God is also much more in the public sphere, which just confuses me. Don't get me wrong. I've met very kind, tolerant, loving, good people who are religious here. But it's an interesting contrast. My parents give no ducks about whether me and my partner believe in God. So long as we are good people. In contrast, my partner's parents are still sad that neither of us have their kind of faith anymore. My parents give no ducks about whether me and my partner believe in God. So long as we are good people. It's one of the biggest things that bugs me about Christianity. So many Christians are the exact opposite of this. They don't care if you're a good person as long as you believe in God. I'm an atheist, but I admire and subscribe to the ideal of peaceful, non-violent resistance, which I see as one of Jesus' core teachings. More than most Christians I know. There is good in Christianity and large segments of the American church ignore or oppose what I see as the best of Christianity. It's weird. People being afraid to point out incompetence in a professional environment because they are afraid that their faults will be pointed out too and they end up getting fired. Let's not get better together and work over our flaws because we could be fired any day now. Makes working with American companies painful with all the back-patting and feel-good bullshit. I actually don't think American companies are that bad for it compared to Asian work culture. I do think some cultures are better for pointing it out more diplomatically though. British culture seems to wrap up a lot of criticism as a joke or as sarcasm, so it's easier to handle. British culture seems to wrap up a lot of criticism as a joke or as sarcasm, so it's easier to handle. Every time I consider moving out of the UK or Ireland, I end up doing a project with a foreign company for a few weeks and get reminded of this, then decide I'm never leaving. Dubai/UAE is the worst in my experience so far. The number of people who will take pride in working themselves to death. You Americans have hitty holidays. Duck tons of shady stuff like unpaid overtime. Huge student loans that count to credit rating. Some people react rationally and realize how hit it is. Others take an absurd amount of pride in it. I work in an American branch of a Japanese manufacturing company. It's completely rational to me to work 50, 60-hour weeks compared to the Japanese guys. They're in the plant 16 hours a day 6 days/week. Eat all their meals here, etc. The work culture over there is insane. Edit. I won't disclose the exact company, but I would be willing to guess almost every Japanese-based company is the same. Their suicide culture is too. It's not even something I've heard, but something I've experienced from Americans, and it's how much pride they take in their heritage, calling themselves Irish American or Italian American and so on, and how much they embrace it, especially with how far back they go. I had an American dude tell me we were brethren because his great-grandfather was Irish. Where I'm from, it doesn't matter where your grandfather or grandmother were from. You were born here, so you are from here, and in my case, I certainly don't go about saying I'm French Northern Irish. Note, I kind of understand why they do it. It's just so ducking strange to me and most people I know. It has a lot to do with the fact that we are a nation made up almost entirely of immigrants. If you are Irish, say, and grow up in Ireland, you can be pretty sure almost all the people around you are also Irish. Same for Italy, Russia, Japan, etc. In the US, everyone but the Native Americans is descended from people who came here within the last 500 years or so. There are pockets in large cities where people of a specific nationality tended to congregate, Little Italy, Chinatown, etc. But for the most part we are a big conglomeration of everything in the world. But the thing is that was true a few generations ago, but now, if you look around you, everybody is an American. Clinging to an antiquated notion of some other nation's identity doesn't make sense when you're 4 or 5 generations out. Americans don't have electric kettles. I do. Edit. No one ever didn't deserve to be gilded quite as hard as I did not deserve this gilding. Thanks though. Yup. American here, and I love my electric kettle. I find it strange how much of an infatuation Americans have for their army. It's pretty ingrained in our culture. That being said, not all of us have raging army boners. Some of us just have raging boners. My family that moved to the US from Canada talked about how neighbors, co-workers, friends and family will stop talking to each other over political opinions. I wouldn't talk to like half my family if I did that. It just seems so sad. We saw it in the UK with Brexit as well. I don't know if it's a particularly US thing or not. I also think that political differences are going wider these days, instead of people being center left and center right and having all that center in common to go with their differences. People are now left or right with fewer shared values, I should say. Fewer perceived shared values. In reality, the shared bit is still the vast majority of all beliefs, but as politics become more and more divisive, it's harder to write differences off and forget that someone you used to respect is still supporting Donald Trump, as if all's good and none of the bat-hit crazy stuff is going on. Jaywalking. I know where it comes from, and it's stupid. And then there are entire housing developments with no pavement, sidewalks. So everyone has to drive. Sidewalks are an endangered species in the USA. I'm a US citizen, but emigrated to Canada 7 years ago. And something that really surprised me is that there are sidewalks everywhere. Like, everywhere. It's possible for a person to actually walk to the store without having to risk life and limb walking literally in the lane of traffic. Compared to Canada, I'm convinced that Americans must have a collective fear of STDs, sidewalkily transmitted diseases. I'm confused, how are there not sidewalks in the US? Do your buildings just abruptly end at the road? Or are you only referring to actual pavements? And not just space between building and road? Canadian here. Driving past those gun/liquor/ammo stores is always startling. I mean, we can't even buy booze at the supermarket. Never mind at the corner store. Along with a gun. Edit, not disparaging the right to own a gun. Just amazed at how they are bought and sold so casually. That varies by state though. As an American who grew up in Pennsylvania, I also could not buy booze at a supermarket or the corner store, and you definitely couldn't buy gun/ammo anywhere that you could buy food/liquor. Bidets are some terrible alien device for most of them. Yep. We associate them with France. I understand your fears. But let the bidet in your life once, and you'll never regret it. The sheer extremes regarding affording college. Either your parents start saving when you're born, or you apply for loans at 18 that you'll pay off when you turn 40. No middle ground. No middle ground is right. If my parents are rich, they pay for my college, and there's no issue. If my parents are poor, my college is paid for by financial aid, and it's still virtually free for me. But if my parents are in the middle, I get no help from them, and no financial aid, and now I need to come up with $200k to pay for school. To be fair, not every college costs $50k a year. In my area, to keep costs as low as possible, you could commute and go to a community college first, which costs about $3k, including books and fees, a year for 2-3 years. So that's $9k. Then, finishing up the last 2 years at a state school would be about $7-8k a year, again, including books and fees. So that's $20k, $25k for all your schooling. A rough estimate, but certainly less daunting than $200k. That universities have to accept a number of people based on skin color. That's crazy to me. You are supposed to filter students by grades or aptitudes, not by appearance. I get the inclusion efforts, but this was a bad idea. It's institutional racism as the answer to racism. That they are okay with their healthcare system because a universal healthcare system is something the filthy communists would do. Although there is not a consensus on how to fix the American healthcare system. I literally know of not one single person that approves of how things are right now. I think, educated guess based on reading, it is very hard because it is rigged by the insurance parties, so everything is incredibly expensive. Of course no universal healthcare system would survive with the prices as they are. It is insane. But because prices are artificially inflated, and there is also a strong cultural bias maybe, I understand why some would be skeptical if the state goes and starts taking your money on beforehand. But there is a reason, and it is solidarity. Yes, you might not need it or not. But if you do, you are not left on your own. We think it is right that we put a bit of money to build a highway that you maybe don't use. But somehow putting money so that no one dies because of not having money, or not having to face an excruciating debt for the rest of your lives, seems to be out of our minds. This is what I don't understand. Honestly. Sure, you can have options. Here, Spain, for example, we have a pretty awesome healthcare system. It has their flaws of course, and it can be improved. But I know I'm covered. I know my jobless familiars are covered too. And I'm glad to put a part of my taxes to help with that. Even if I don't need it right now, I gladly let that money go out of my wallet before being in my hands, knowing that it might help people that needs it. I have a workmate that developed cancer recently. He's been out of work for 4 months. In chemo right now. He is getting 100% of his salary and everything is paid by the healthcare system. I don't want to imagine if this scene was in the US and had to go through negotiations and whatnot with insurance. Not even talking about companies. What do we want a society for if we don't agree to build an umbrella to protect us? And before someone mentions that some people don't deserve or deserve less, I'd rather let someone that don't deserves it to get the medical care anyways than even having to answer that nasty question. The national obsession with guns. As an outsider, it's utterly astounding that so many Americans think that everyone needs to have deadly weapons on their person / in their homes in order for society to be safe / free. You could only have gotten this idea from television. Nobody thinks everyone needs a gun. No one is trying to force anyone to own a gun who does not want to. Ducking like and subscribe.